0517 local time. Sonar picks up a fleeting contact bearing 087, fast screws moving through the water. No music, no dramatic buildup, only the quiet hum of conditioned air inside the Combat Information Center and the cold glow of multifunction displays. 3 seconds later, the call cuts through the room. Sonar reports an incoming underwater threat, then repeats it. Clean, sharp, unmistakable. Inside the carrier strike group, the formation tightens without anyone needing to raise their voice. At the center of the screen, the Nimitz-class carrier holds course for only a fraction of a second. Then the helm responds. Hard right rudder. Full speed ahead. Nothing turns into panic. Everything turns into motion. General quarters sounds. Hatches seal. White light gives way to red. Every sailor moves with the speed of repetition, the speed that only comes from drills run again and again. Off the port side, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer angles inward, deliberately placing itself between the carrier and the oncoming danger. Its anti-submarine suite shifts from listening to action. A hard sonar pulse tears through the sea. Seconds stretch. Sonar locks on. Fast. Shallow. Closing. Estimated speed 45 knots and climbing. Range now under 5,000 yards. This is no drifting contact, not debris, not marine life. It is a wake-homing underwater weapon. Somewhere below the surface, an Iranian diesel-electric submarine has fired with clear intent. No warning, no signal, no statement, just metal racing through dark water. The carrier leans into another turn, 20 degrees starboard, speed pushing past 30 knots. At this point, survival is pure mathematics. Bearing rate, closure speed, angle on the bow. Change the equation fast enough, and you stay alive. Launch Nixie. From the stern of the escorting destroyer, a towed acoustic decoy splashes into the sea. The countermeasure system begins projecting a false signature into the water, louder, closer, and more tempting than the carrier's own propellers. The seeker listens. The ocean fills with engineered noise. Another active sonar pulse goes out, stronger this time. The return comes back sharp. The weapon is still tracking, still correcting. Time to impact, 90 seconds. On the carrier's flight deck, aircraft handlers stop for less than a heartbeat, then continue securing ordnance and fuel lines. The choreography of survival does not pause for fear. Deep below, reactor output rises to feed propulsion. The ship shudders as it drives harder through the water. The strike group commander studies the display and speaks in the calm tone of someone doing exactly what he trained to do. Maintain formation integrity. Execute ASW response plan. Bravo. No wasted words, no emotion, only process. Sonar reports a second transient. Possible launch splash, bearing 085. The room narrows around the screens. A second underwater signature is now in the water. 2 threats. Not a warning shot, a deliberate attack. The first weapon begins to slide off its original line. The decoy is pulling it, but only partially. Wake-homing logic hunts for the strongest sound, and the carrier is still the loudest machine in the ocean. On the destroyer's deck, helicopter crews run. The MH-60R Seahawk is already spinning, rotors cutting into the humid air. Sonobuoys are stacked. Mk-54 lightweight torpedoes hang armed beneath the frame. Engines rise, the aircraft lifts. From above, the strike group still looks controlled, almost calm. From below, the sea is disorder. Impact window, 40 seconds. The destroyer shifts again, crossing just ahead of the carrier's track. Not sacrifice, geometry. Tactical positioning meant to create confusion in the water, to alter aspect angles and force the seeker into uncertainty. The Nixie decoy screams beneath the waves. The first torpedo drifts 5 degrees, then 10, then farther. The sonar operator only exhales when the bearing rate confirms it is peeling away. First weapon diverted, but no one celebrates. The second one has not moved. Second weapon still holding carrier solution, range collapsing. 20 seconds. The carrier cuts even harder to starboard. Her wake boils white behind her. Every system is now engaged. Decoys running, helicopter airborne. And far below, the submarine that fired is already trying to disappear, diving, maneuvering, searching for a way back into the dark. At 0519 local time, the first weapon disappears harmlessly into the field of false noise. The second keeps coming. The ocean does not care about politics or escalation. It only measures distance, and the distance is shrinking. 0519 local time. Second weapon still tracking. Range 1,800 yards. Bearing steady. The carrier continues her turn, screws digging deep, throwing a wall of turbulence across the surface. Speed holds above 30 knots. The strike group stretches, escorts adjusting with disciplined precision so they do not drift into one another's acoustic shadows. On the destroyer's sonar display, the approaching track is no longer just a symbol. It feels like a personality now, aggressive, correcting, listening. Deploy additional countermeasure. Another acoustic decoy drops into the carrier's wake. The water fills with layered false targets, echo patterns, simulated propeller harmonics, and carefully shaped distortions designed to tempt a seeker built to destroy the biggest sound it can find. For a moment, the weapon hesitates. Then it shifts. 5 degrees. 10. Second weapon deviating. Again, no cheering. Just confirmation. It is now chasing the decoy. Time to closest approach. 30 seconds. The carrier keeps speed, easing the rudder just enough to widen separation from the false acoustic bloom. Geometry again. Always geometry. At 0520, sonar reports a detonation. A dull concussion rolls through the water column, distant but clear. The decoy has done its work. 2 threats entered the water. 2 were neutralized. No impact. Still, nobody in CIC relaxes. Because these events do not happen without a submarine, and submarines do not make one move without planning for the next. Shift to prosecution. The destroyer moves from defense to hunt mode. The A/SQ-89 suite goes fully active. A powerful ping drives downward, punching through the thermal layers that had hidden the attacker just minutes before. Surface noise falls away. The seafloor sketches itself in digital return. Then sonar reports a possible submarine contact bearing 086, depth around 100 feet. Slow screws. It did not run deep right away. It is still close, still inside the engagement envelope, likely maneuvering after launch and trying to reposition for escape. The acoustic picture sharpens. Blade count, shaft rate, moments of cavitation. Intelligence overlays begin to stack across the screen. Diesel electric, small displacement. Acoustic match trending toward an Iranian Ghadir-class coastal submarine. Estimated unit cost, $58 million. Built for ambush in shallow water, designed to deny choke points. Deadly when hidden. Now it is no longer hidden. Above the destroyer, the MH-60R reaches its first drop point. Buoys away. Sonobuoys hit the sea in staggered sequence, spreading into an expanding acoustic net. Data streams back in real time. Passive lines triangulate. Active pulses refine. The helicopter drops lower. Dipping sonar deploys. The dome lowers into the water like a sensor spear. The operator listens. Then, contact solid. Bearing 086. Depth 115 feet. Speed increasing. The submarine accelerates, and in shallow water, that is a mistake. Speed creates noise. Noise creates identity. The destroyer's tactical picture tightens. Fire control solutions begin forming automatically. Range decreases. The strike group commander stays calm. Clear the helo for engagement. At 0523, the helicopter banks into position over the confirmed contact. Cleared hot. A Mark 54 lightweight torpedo drops cleanly from the Seahawk. It hits the water with barely a splash before coming alive beneath the surface. Now the hunter becomes the hunted. The Iranian submarine reacts instantly. Speed rises again. Hard turn to port. An attempt to dive deeper, but the continental shelf limits the move. This is not open ocean sanctuary. This is restricted maneuver space. The Mark 54 acquires, pings actively, and locks on. The submarine's acoustic signature spikes. Sudden ballast shifts. Propulsion surges. Frantic course changes. On the destroyer, a second weapon is prepared. Recommend surface launch. Approved. From the destroyer's launcher, an anti-submarine rocket fires, carrying another Mark 54 payload. It arcs briefly through open air, then splashes down near the submarine's projected escape route. Now, 2 American torpedoes are converging beneath the sea. The submarine's captain has only seconds left. Decoys appear, weak improvised bursts of false sound. Not enough. The first Mark 54 closes rapidly. Impact in 5, 4, 3. Sonar operators lean forward, not in fear, but in concentration. 2, 1. At 0527 local time, the ocean convulses. Not a cinematic fireball, not something dramatic above the surface, just a deep, violent pressure pulse spreading through the water. On sonar, the propulsion signature vanishes. Metallic fragmentation appears. Debris field expanding. Contact lost. No further screw noise. Oil trace rising. The room remains still because confirmation matters more than emotion. Minutes pass. No secondary propulsion, no emergency ballast blow, no return fire. The $58 million submarine is no longer maneuvering, but the strike group does not declare victory because the first question after any engagement is never celebration. It is intent, and intent has not yet been fully answered. 0528 local time. Primary submarine contact no longer maneuvering. Debris field confirmed. Oil trace expanding. No applause. No verbal reaction beyond the data. The tactical display still holds red. Underwater weapons do not launch themselves, and submarines do not operate without command awareness. The carrier keeps flank speed for another minute before easing slightly. Rudder returns toward controlled heading. Formation begins to compress back into protective geometry, but the search is not over. Expand search grid. Assume secondary contact until disproven. The destroyer widens its active sweeps. Another escort joins from the outer screen, tightening acoustic coverage. A second helicopter lifts from the cruiser's deck, rotors slicing the humid air. More sonobuoys go into the sea in disciplined spacing. A lattice forms across the water, layered detection, layered control beneath the surface. The turbulence begins to settle. The debris rises, insulation fragments, metal shards, pockets of trapped air climbing silently toward daylight. The Mark 54 detonation was not symbolic. It was final. Intelligence overlays begin populating across the strike group network. Satellites queue on Iranian coastal bases. Signals intelligence scans for transmission spikes. Nothing immediate. No distress burst, no open claim, no public acknowledgement, only silence. In naval warfare, silence can be the most dangerous variable of all. Recommend battle damage assessment pattern. Approved. The first MH-60R lowers again, this time not to engage but to document. High-resolution electro-optical imagery captures the oil sheen spreading across the surface. Debris is photographed, coordinates logged, timestamps recorded, everything archived. Because in modern naval combat, proof matters just as much as precision. New transient contact bearing 092. Faint. Every head turns back towards sonar. Classify. Seconds stretch. The contact flickers, fades, returns, possibly biological, no propulsion signature. After violence, the ocean plays tricks. Shock waves displace layers. Cavitation echoes linger. Marine life shifts course. Thermal gradients bend sound in strange ways. No one assumes safety. Another active ping goes out. The return comes back clear. No structured machinery noise. The faint contact dissolves. False alarm. The only confirmed hostile asset in the water is no longer operational. Above deck, flight operations begin again, slowly. Armed aircraft that had paused mid-cycle resume repositioning. Catapult crews secure equipment. But readiness remains elevated. Condition 2. Not full wartime surge, but far from routine, because escalation does not require a surviving submarine. It only requires a decision on shore. The strike group shifts its focus outward. The horizon expands, not visually, but electronically. Sensors reach farther. Surveillance deepens. An E-2D Hawkeye climbs higher into the sky, extending radar coverage inland. Electronic warfare teams begin scanning Iranian naval frequencies, filtering through layers of signals, searching for anything unusual. If this attack had been coordinated, there should be communication, commands, reactions, something. There is nothing, and that silence doesn't bring comfort. It feels deliberate. 5:42. The oil slick thickens. Small fragments begin to reach the surface. One piece, composite material, carries visible markings, serial numbers. Within seconds, high-resolution imagery is captured and transmitted through secure channels. Analysts begin matching materials, construction patterns. The conclusion forms quickly. This was not an accident, not a miscalculation. This was a state asset. The strike group gradually reduces speed, settling into operational tempo. Damage control reports come in, one after another. No hull damage, no impact. Flight deck operations uninterrupted. 2 incoming torpedoes diverted. 1 hostile submarine eliminated. All of it happened in under 10 minutes. The efficiency feels almost clinical. The implication is anything but small. Inside the Combat Information Center, the commander speaks quietly, almost as if stating a routine update. Log the engagement as a hostile act. Maintain defensive posture. No further action without direct authorization. No emotion, no escalation. Because the line has already been crossed. A submarine launched real torpedoes at a U.S. carrier and was destroyed. What happens next is no longer about sonar or maneuvering. It becomes strategy. 600. Surface picture clear. Subsurface stable. Airspace uncontested. But the formation doesn't relax. It tightens. Cruisers adjust missile coverage. Destroyers widen anti-submarine lanes. Beneath the surface, U.S. submarines reposition silently under the carrier, unseen but very much present. Nothing is announced. It doesn't need to be. Any observer watching from shore can read the situation clearly. The carrier is still here, fully operational, unharmed, aircraft launching on schedule. The submarine that fired is gone. As the sun rises higher, the ocean slowly erases the evidence. Oil spreads thinner. Debris drifts apart. The surface returns to calm. But the logs do not forget. 517, torpedo detected. 527, hostile contact neutralized. 10 minutes. A decision worth $58 million erased faster than a commercial break. And yet, the silence that follows feels heavier than the event itself. Because somewhere beyond the horizon, someone gave that order. And now, someone understands the cost. 6:12. The ocean appears calm again. Almost too calm. Inside the carrier's CIC, the screens are no longer filled with immediate threats. No active underwater contacts, no propulsion signatures. But the tension hasn't disappeared. Because escalation doesn't only move through water. Signal intelligence update. Iranian coastal radar activity increasing. The report lands quietly. On board the cruiser, electronic warfare teams begin cataloging frequency spikes. Coastal radars flicker. Active, idle, active again. Search patterns widen beyond routine maritime zones. They're not searching blindly. They're looking with purpose. Satellite confirmation comes in. Fast attack craft are leaving Bandar Abbas. 3 small missile boats accelerating out of harbor. Their wakes narrow, cutting clean lines through the water. They're not within range yet, but they are moving. The strike group commander remains composed. Maintain defensive posture. Do not close distance. This is the critical window. Not the moment of attack, but the hour after. This is where pressure, perception, and decision collide. The Hawkeye expands its radar sweep. Airspace remains clear. No aircraft airborne, but the destroyers elevate readiness. Interceptors move from standby to active tracking. Fire control systems align with coastal batteries without locking. Not aggression, a signal. The carrier continues forward at steady speed. No sudden retreat, no attempt to exit the region. It holds its course. Unapologetically. The cruiser isolates another signal, coastal anti-ship radar. Not yet within effective range, but active. Iran still has options, and they're weighing them. Below the surface, U.S. submarines shift positions silently. Invisible, but decisive. If the situation escalates further, response time will be measured in seconds. 6:24. No missiles launched, no aircraft airborne. The fast attack craft reduced speed. Not retreating, but no longer advancing aggressively. Coastal radar intensity drops back to standard search patterns. This isn't de-escalation, it's recalibration. Inside CIC, the picture becomes clear. The torpedo attack wasn't random. It was a test, a calculated move, a gamble. The idea was simple. 2 torpedoes from a low-cost platform might force a carrier to withdraw or provoke a large response. Either outcome could be used, but neither happened. The carrier didn't retreat, and there was no large-scale retaliation. Instead, the response was controlled, precise, proportional. And then, it stopped. That restraint changes everything, because escalation would have been easy to explain. Action, reaction, headlines, but restraint creates tension. So the strike group does something far more powerful. It continues. Flight deck activity increases. 2 FA-18 launch on routine patrol. Not configured for strike, but armed. Visible on radar. Visible from shore. The message is simple. We're still here. 6:40. No official statement from Iranian command. No claims. No footage. No narrative. Silence. Because acknowledging the loss means acknowledging the attack. And that opens the door to consequences. So the surface remains quiet, but the pressure remains. The strike group adjusts again. Patrols extend further inland. Electronic surveillance arcs widen. Missile tracking refines. The carrier maintains its steady course. This is not about force. This is about controlled dominance. The most unexpected outcome isn't the destruction of the submarine. That was tactical. The real shift is strategic restraint. A move was made, it failed, and escalation stopped. because continuing would now carry higher risk, and that risk is no longer balanced. 7:05. The fast attack craft turned back toward port. No announcement, no signal, just a change in direction. Coastal radar activity drops to routine levels. The escalation window begins to close. The strike group doesn't pursue, doesn't press closer, maintains distance, maintains readiness, maintains presence. Because sometimes the strongest move is not using your advantage. It's showing that you could. By 7:30, operations settle into a steady rhythm again. Aircraft launch. Deck crews move with precision. Nothing feels rushed. Because the carrier was never hit. And that matters. Below deck, analysts finalize the timeline. Detection, response, neutralization. 10 minutes. No damage, no casualties, no uncontrolled escalation. All data archived, every signal recorded, every detail preserved. Attribution is no longer a question. The materials, the acoustic profile, the debris, everything aligns. A state asset was deployed, and it is gone. The commander gives a brief update. No speeches, no framing. Maintain posture. Continue mission. That's it. Because real dominance doesn't need emphasis. It shows itself through continuity. Operations resume fully. Helicopters cycle. Destroyers return to standard screening patterns. Subsurface escorts continue silent patrol. The formation holds, unbroken, and the message travels farther than any weapon. An attack was made, the threat was removed, and nothing else changed. By 8:10, commercial shipping resumes normal routes. Civilian vessels return to course under quiet observation. No announcements, just confidence. Stability returns to the map. Inside CIC, one screen continues replaying the sequence. 2 incoming threats, 2 successful countermeasures, 1 hostile unit eliminated. No celebration, because success here is measured differently. Not by destruction, but by what was avoided. The Iranian network remains active but restrained. No follow-up action, no probing flights, no missile launches, internal communication spikes briefly, then fades, reassessment, the oil slick continues to disperse, surface evidence disappears, but the data remains. Every engagement sharpens the system. Every system improves the next response. By late morning, the event will be summarized in controlled language. A hostile underwater threat was engaged and neutralized. Nothing more. But those who understand will see the full picture. A low-cost platform challenged a capital ship. The outcome was decisive and contained. On deck, another launch cycle begins. Jets rise into clear sky. From a distance, nothing looks different. But beneath the surface, everything has changed. A submarine rests silent on the seabed. The carrier it targeted continues operations. That imbalance, that's the real story. 10 o'clock local time. Readiness gradually shifts back toward normal levels. Not relaxed, never relaxed, just controlled. Because the mission never stopped. At 5:17, a torpedo entered the water. At 5:27, the ocean claimed a submarine. By 7:30, aircraft were launching again. No spectacle, no dramatic escalation, just precision, discipline, presence. And in modern naval operations, continuing forward after an attack sends the clearest signal of all. The strike group doesn't leave, doesn't hesitate, it keeps moving. Because the most significant outcome wasn't what happened underwater, it was what didn't happen after. No wider conflict, no uncontrolled chain of events, just a message, written in steel, signal, and silence. You made the first move, and we remained.